Welcome, everyone, to the captive audience. It is the 13th of January. It is a Monday. We are 7 days away from the end of calling Joe Biden our current president. That's a good Let's Go, Brandon theme for today. I am Kevin Hoare, and I'm not making millions off China. And I still think water puts out fires, which apparently almost nobody running anything in the state of California or Los Angeles uh, seems to know that. But it's great to be here with you tonight. I did want to just kind of touch upon the biggest story in the news in the country, which are the California wildfires. It's been unbelievable to watch what's been unfolding, and really just in a few days, they this is maybe a moment of truth, one that's going to fundamentally impact how people view and what people think of Democrat one party rule in the state of California, and also of woke policies that they have a real cost. That the three Kristens and one somebody or other um, that happen to be lesbian are running the fire department. Um, that was a priority. Clearly, what wasn't a priority is making sure that they could put out fires, making sure that they had everything they needed to do that. And when you're focused on DEI and you're spending your training money on DEI and you're spending all your time focused on trying to make sure that you recruit people who are not the white males that dominate firefighting, um, then you're not really focused on fighting fires. You're focused on DEI. And that has had a tremendous cost here. And, there's a reason why big, burly white males seem to be in that profession, because it's tough work and it requires people that have done that tough work to understand how to manage and supervise it and to fight for it. And certainly hoping that the people that are running the firefighting, the three Christians, et cetera, that are running firefighting in uh, what is now the inferno of Pacific Palisades and several other regions of the greater Los Angeles area. I hope they are, but I don't actually have a lot of confidence that that's the case right now. And it's concerning because it really shouldn't be a problem. Um, it really shouldn't be happening that people can't uh, rely upon those emergency services to do their jobs and to be overwhelmed and caught off guard, frankly, by something that it's their job to watch for. There's also a bunch of people that are running around blaming climate change. But have you noticed that climate change is blamed no matter what happens, which means they're blaming you. It's like blaming the victim, really. And they, whether it's too cold, too hot, it rains too much, it's too dry, there's a fire, there's not a fire. It's always the blaming climate change, even if you want to say it's climate change that helped create these conditions, is the answer to do nothing to mitigate the impact and the risk of what's happening, such as clearing brush, making sure that there's adequate irrigation, to make sure that you reduce the impact of a potential fire and that you are prepared to fight them when they do happen and rapidly extinguish them. Doesn't make any sense in the world to ignore all those very simple measures. I saw a very, very good interview with Devin Nunes. He's, I think, one of the smartest guys around. He apparently was smart enough to get out of Congress and go and become the CEO of Truth Social, which is now going to be worth like $1 billion or more, multiple billions, actually. And But he's also the guy who, along with the help of Kash Patel, our hopefully soon to be FBI director, called BS on the Russia controversy, and the it was fake news. It was a phony story. It was created. It was actually Hillary Clinton who was collaborating with Russia. Meanwhile, Donald Trump was the one vilified and investigated. People were put in jail as part of the investigation who refused to betray their confidential conversations with the president, and and so there have been real consequences of that. Well, we're talking about a world where there are real consequences for doing the wrong thing with the time and the money that you have, the public policy issues. And I'm concerned that we may not wake up fast enough to realize just how deep this goes, how deep the rabbit hole goes on all this stuff. Um, I've got to say that I'm I'm concerned that there's a bunch of stinkers waiting for us as soon as Trump gets in there, because look at the stuff that's happening that they apparently can't control because it's so out of control. And I am an optimist. I believe that Donald Trump will do a hell of a job dealing with these crises. But I also think that there's a bunch of crises waiting to be unleashed. Unleashed at a time and manner of the choosing of the people who have been creating and instigating these problems for a very, very long time. And I don't know that it's probably gonna get worse before it gets better. Like, there's so many things the media hasn't bothered talking about because the only person to blame would have been Joe Biden and the Democrats. But there are real reasons to be concerned about what's going to happen with our economy, with our foreign policy, with natural disasters, fires that need to be fought, and then problems to be prevented, terrorist attacks to be thwarted. They've unleashed how many terrorists into the country across the border that they just treated as if they were, asylum seekers. Uh, Even if it's a few hundred, it took 19 people to do 9/11. So what's a few hundred going to do? Well, figure it out, because I think you're going to find that things like your water supply is going to get poisoned, your electricity is going to terminate. You're gonna be pretty disappointed with what occurs. But coming back to what I was telling you about before, Devin Nunes outlines in very, very clear style here uh, the problems in California. He is a farmer. He's somebody who came to this honestly, public policy, because he was concerned that they weren't actually doing the right things, not just by farmers, but part of what they were doing to keep brush down was grazing. If you drive farmers and ranchers out of your state and you ban the timber industry from harvesting anything and just let nature take its course, that's what you're seeing in California. He really does explain this well. We need good explainers like Devin Nunes to be there for us. He's fantastic. And I really appreciate it. I suggest you watch it, because in one video, it's an interview with Martina Bartiromo on Fox Business. And she's, of course, a very good interviewer, too. But if you just want to have it all in one place and then share it with your friends who say it's not that, it's climate change, well, then go watch this from somebody who knows and understands what he's talking about. Why is it that the stuff that worked 50 years ago we stopped doing, and now we have all these fires? It's not climate change that's causing all these fires. It's not doing the things that used to prevent fires that happened all the time. By the way, I heard something interesting too. Richard Epstein, who's a law professor, University of Chicago, and public policy guy, really smart. I was listening to him being interviewed, and he said he learned something interesting, that if you have 2 years of wet, well, they had record rainfall, by the way, the last 2 years. They let the hundreds of billions of gallons just go into the Pacific Ocean instead of keeping it in reservoirs so they could use it for drinking and fighting wildfires. in California. But there's another consequence to this, which again points to a public policy failure. If you have record rainfall for 2 years, I think going all the way back into like the early 1800s, something like that is how much rain they got. During those 2 years, you see a massive increase in foliage. Just everything grows because California is very fertile soil. So once you get the rain, and of course, you've got the sunlight and the fertile soil, all that foliage grows. Then you have a dry year, which happens every so many years. You know what happens to all that foliage? It dries out. If you don't cut it back, or if you don't let animals come and graze on it and get rid of it, then it turns into what you're seeing in California right now. That's how dumb the policymakers are. And I mean, Karen Bass is toast. I don't know what's going to happen, but she's definitely got enough Hollywood liberals with burned down houses that are done listening to the garbage. She might have created more Republicans in Los Angeles in just a week than any voter registration drive or TV ad campaign could have done with $1 billion over 5 years. She did it in a week. And I think you're going to see a consequence. Now, some of these folks aren't going to totally realize just how wrong the policies were before, but they're starting to ask questions. They're saying, well, I know there's climate change, but why didn't we do something about this? How do you fight a fire with fire hydrants that don't provide water? And then whose job was that? And then you look at the things that Gavin Newsom bragged he did. He cut off the supply of water. He made it so that there wouldn't be any. And he's proud of it because apparently he was helping fish, particularly a smelt fish, which is a tiny fish that's eaten by other fish, but not a fish that you use to endanger and impoverish the world's fifth largest economy and America's largest and most populous state. But you know what? You know who has to care about that first? People in California. They're the ones who have to actually care that this is happening. And I think that that is what's starting to happen. And like I mentioned about the Kristens, yeah, Elon Musk actually responded to this too. And it is three lesbians named Kristen. And by the way, I got no problem. Be lesbian. That's fine. I think it's great actually. For you know, that's it's just not a very good firefighting policy if that's your focus. If you prioritize that above all the things they've clearly done wrong. By the way, she's the first LGBTQ fire chief. She's a graduate of Harvard Business School, the one that you've been seeing on TV. And she makes, get this, and it doesn't sound like Harvard Business School involved a lot of fighting fires in the trenches for years, but I'll let her explain her background. $439,772. That's more than, I believe, almost everybody, including maybe the President of the United States. And she said her mission, this is her mission. It's not make sure that we rapidly extinguish fires and protect the community against the danger of wildfires, protect our natural beauty. It is, quote, the creation of systemic equity and inclusion across the LAFD, Los Angeles Fire Department, unquote. And then, of course, they go into some of the others that are involved with this. There's another Kristen. She's the first lesbian assistant chief. Again, Harvard Kennedy School for managing diverse organizations. Not the masters in firefighting that you might expect, but the Kennedy School. Wonderful institution, not known for its great firefighting. It goes on. Kristen Larson, she is the Los Angeles Fire Department's first lesbian equity bureau chief. $399,000. She's the co-founder of something called Equity on Fire. Yeah, there's a lot on fire. I think equity and DEI is on fire It's burning up, man. And uh, she got the job, apparently, according to this Twitter post, by constantly accusing the Los Angeles Fire Department of being racist and sexist. Yeah. Um, and then there is one person not named Kristen amongst the leadership. She's the first Los Angeles Fire Department lesbian training commander. Her greatest accomplishment, the post jokes, is not being named Kristen or Christine. Go read it. Charlie Kirk responded to this post saying, "Stop it. Is this a joke?" He's like, it just sounds like another fake news story, except it cites all the publicly available information. You can go look at it for yourself. But this is what has a real consequence. By the way, another guy who's really great, Michael Schellenberger. You should go check him out. I'm going to post this story from X that really he describes in some detail the deep flaws of California surrounding Gavin Newsom and Mayor Kristen Bass and the Democrat Party, of which he used to be a liberal progressive member years ago. They keep saying, and he said, you're going to hear this, that there's nothing they could have done to prevent the fires from destroying Los Angeles. They will all be lies. They could have prevented them. And he goes on to explain exactly how. And what they did, not only to not prevent them, to make it harder to prevent them by cutting funding for prevention, by failing to build sufficient water resources, for fighting them, even though it's been mandated for over 11 years that there be sufficient reservoir capacity in the state of California. The Palisades Reservoir, zero, out of commission, unavailable. Karen Bass cut $17.5 million from the fire department. Then she went to Ghana, even though she knew the risk of catastrophic fires. They're going to blame the wind, and they're going to blame climate change. But this really goes on in some detail. A gentleman by the name of Rick Caruso, who ran for mayor against Karen Bass, he called for increasing the fire department's budget. Maybe someone will listen to him next time because this has a high cost. By the way, I don't know if people are going to be able to get insurance after this in Los Angeles and many other places, because when the loss can be so total, really the insurance companies have to take into consideration that the state that they've decided to operate in is making the risk that they're trying to insure untenable. And of course, here's the video that you should all go watch that shows not only the Palisades damage, destruction, and smoke, but the reservoir that was supposed to have 117 million gallons of water in it, not operating. And of course, people are losing power around there too. I want to mention something else. This is really of great concern. Just within the last day or so, we learned more about what Chinese hackers have done. State-sponsored Chinese hackers have done across the United States. And they've been doing it for a while and with impunity. Apparently, they've penetrated our entire infrastructure services. They have penetrated our water systems, the power systems. They all the different kinds of utilities, gas, electric. They have gotten into our airport operating systems. And apparently they've been doing it for a while, and they even every once in a while quietly come in and check it again. And this is something that has been discovered by the FBI. Have you heard Joe Biden talking about it incessantly, how he's going to put his fist down and do something about it? Yeah, me neither. But yet we're this vulnerable, and almost inevitably what they're going to do is, if they get the opportunity, they're just going to shut the United States down at just the moment when it's convenient to them, and perhaps most inconvenient to us. I did watch an interview with a gentleman yesterday who is also one of, I think, the top experts. Let me see if I can pull this up. I really like him. He was interviewed by Laura Ingraham yesterday, and here it is. See if I can get the copy this one and provide it to you. But what he said was that his name is Kristen Witten, and he comments on what's going to happen to our infrastructure and what could happen. Really, if you're China and you want to go after Taiwan, this isn't going to be like other wars where there's explosions and people shooting each other, and we mobilize our military and there's a fight somewhere thousands of miles away, and we just sit here watching on TV and live our lives as normal. They're going to take down the United States while they're doing it. They're going to make it so that we're so overwhelmed by our domestic problems that they can trigger that we will do very little, if not anything, to combat them there. We'll be flat on our backs. I've certainly been one of the people that has warned about this for a long time. And it's not just China, but really anybody who could trigger an EMP. However, it looks like they found a way to do it through cyber hacking. And this critical infrastructure is compromised. So are all of your phone calls and text messages that are being captured. That backdoor that the FBI wanted to make sure they had to get in and monitor communications of, well, they say foreign terrorists and people working with them, but we know they used it on everybody, including President Trump, to surveil them unconstitutionally and illegally. However, it's the Chinese hackers figured out how to get in the back door of the major television or telephone service providers and get this information. So maybe you don't want a foreign military hostile power to have all this information because of what they could do with it, especially when you associate this with AI and massive databases and quantum computing, where you can literally just go in and weaponize all this information. So this is what's happening. This is how incompetent the government is that we have. We have so much to do to secure our country. So much. Shifting gears here, here's a couple of other national stories that really caught my attention. I thought I would highlight for you guys. And it is that the January 6th, folks, the greatest disaster in world history, as the Babylon Bee likes to lampoon it as, that the Democrats tried to call it. J.D. Vance, Vice President-elect, came out and commented on what they are going to do as far as perhaps pardoning many, if not all, of the January 6th defendants. One thing that's clear and easily proven is that the security was not only non-existent on an entire side of the Capitol building that day, but there was a willful and intentional effort to make sure that there was not only not sufficient security, but it was directed by Nancy Pelosi. And it was also shockingly intentional to make sure that people could get in who would cause some mischief, of which any crowd of that size, just a few hundred people, is all it took. And that's what happened. And some of those folks probably have been prosecuted, and rightly so, for doing damage. But they also went and took grandmas in sweatpants that were looking for a toilet and prosecuted them, and others who really they threw the book at many of them, even though some of them should have only faced at most a misdemeanor or something along those lines. And if anything at all, if just simply a warning, right? They didn't do any harm. They didn't cause any harm. And yet we had the entire summer of love of destruction in Portland and many other cities, causing billions of dollars in damage, killing people, uh, and um, and frankly, laying waste to entire city blocks within many major cities. And almost no action was taken about that, and still hasn't been taken. Well, JD Vance said that they're going to make sure that the people who were prosecuted unfairly over January 6th should be pardoned, and we're going to find out what that means. Uh, but he said, I think it's really simple. Look, if you protested peacefully on January 6th and you had Merrick Garland's Department of Justice treat you like a gang member, you should be pardoned. If you committed violence on that day, obviously you shouldn't be pardoned. It's a little bit gray area in there, he said, but they're very much committed to the equal administration of law. He said, we need to rectify this. So I think that's actually good because you can see what's been done to President Trump with our justice system. And this is actually right out of the Constitution, equal justice under the law, right there. And it should be that. That's what we have fought for. That is what we have established fundamentally as the cornerstone of our judicial and legal system and in our Constitution. It's time to deliver that. With Joe Biden, you're not getting that. You're getting Hunter Biden pardons that he said he would never do, and presidential medals of freedom for George Soros. An abomination. Horrible. But the mystery's over. We now know that this is exactly what they intended to do, and they will continue to do for as long as they get the opportunity to. Let me see. I don't think I posted this yet, or did I? Oh, yeah, I did. I think I posted the Devin Nunes interview. Yes, good. So I want to make sure you had those because you should share them with your friends. By the way, one last national news story, and then I'm going to just skip into some state and local stuff. David Weiss, who was the special counsel assigned to investigate President Joe Biden and Hunter Biden, he came out in a final statement here as he gives his report to Congress. And he confirms that Hunter made millions of dollars on the family name in a final report and slammed the president for accusing prosecutors of being political when he pardoned his son. That's right. Joe Biden, who actually could have fired these prosecutors if he thought that they were actually being political and unfair, attacked these prosecutors in order to justify the pardon that he said he would never do. And he denied any allegations that the prosecutions were politically motivated. He said it wasn't vindictive at all. In fact, as we know, they did everything they could, many of the people in the Department of Justice, to make it so that there would be no charges filed against Hunter Biden at all until a judge called them on that and then told them that they couldn't do that. So, that's the situation we're in right now, is that we have a wounded justice system, one that frankly is probably going to end up letting someone like Hunter and Joe Biden escape real consequences. In the case of Joe Biden, I think it's fair to say that's a high crime and misdemeanor. Meanwhile, we have Jack Smith, who is the special counsel assigned to prosecute President Trump over January 6th, as well as others. And he's pretty much dropped all these charges because they were that bad. They were that stupid. But he is going to release a report just so that he can besmirch as much as he can in a one-sided presentation President Trump. That's his only goal. And I'm really not sure why Judge Eileen Cannon is allowing that to happen. But Merrick Garland is the one that wants this to happen. And these stories are all connected. We really need somebody to come in and not only right the system and get it to be doing what it's supposed to be doing again, which, by the way, should be making sure that there aren't a bunch of terrorists running around our country trying to kill people. I think I explained last week that I was in New Orleans when the attack occurred, and I walked right past the area where the attack occurred, but just a few hours before it. I was there to watch my alma mater play Georgia, and they did win in the Sugar Bowl. But that football game was delayed a day after that. But I was there, and I might have walked right past the IEDs this guy was leaving along the way that did not go off. But this was really an example of how, again, some local government incompetence, I think, is going to emerge from this. The fact that they just weren't prepared to apparently stop somebody from driving straight down that street. Um, and the excuses are numerous, but they just don't fly. But we also know that if we have an FBI that isn't performing counterterrorism, but is focused on prosecuting grandmas in sweatpants for looking for trespassing to find a toilet in the Capitol building that they welcomed her into, along with many others, then we have a system that is deadly flawed, lethally flawed, and it needs to be fixed. I also think, and this is my profound conviction, they need to spend as much time as they can exposing all the things that took place these past 4 years. All of it. All of it has to be pushed out into the public domain where everybody can see it, and the Democrats can't deny it and spin it and claim it never happened. It's all got to be out there. It's all got to be presented. It's all got to be exposed. All of it. And some people say, well, we should just move on and let bygones be bygones. I don't actually think that works, because the Democrats will pretend like they always had good intentions and none of the things that they were accused of were true. And then all the things they accused Republicans of, they'll continue to insist are true, even though they have really completely fallen apart and been debunked. And many people, by the way, still don't know that it's false. They still think that that President Trump has actually been convicted of legitimate felonies. That's garbage. And that's going to be eventually reversed. Unfortunately, long after the sentencing, which they tried to proceed with in order to besmirch him. And I think we're going to find out what that means. And we've got weighty issues to deal with. And I know these things seem like they're in the past, but they're important because the victors do have a say over how people recognize history. In this case, we just have to get the truth out there and make sure everybody knows it, both about the folks that were unfairly and unjustly treated and the people who did it and how often they did it and who did it. Who decided not to take up a Washington, D.C. Department of Justice case against Joe Biden and Hunter? Who decided that? Well, that person needs to come and explain it under oath. Because maybe they won't be able to tell the truth, or maybe they'll have to tell the truth about somebody who thought they were going to get away with it. About time. Hey, just a few sort of state level things that I thought were worth saying. We're about to head into the state legislative session. And by the way, I want to do a little plug. Tomorrow night, I'm going to have Representative Ed Deal on, and he's going to talk about Governor Kotek's State of the State speech that she gave today. There was a Republican response. I'm totally happy to give you these links so that you can watch and kind of learn from or take in what it is that did happen. Let me post. Here is the YouTube of the Republican response to it. And then I don't have a link to Tina Kotek's State of the State speech, but it's easily found with a simple search. I don't want to waste your time right now doing it. But as we head back into this legislative session, we're going to talk about what is happening. Democrats got all the wrong message here in Oregon. They think that the public loves their policies. Well, guess what? They're bringing back House Joint Resolution 6 and House Joint Resolution 8, the big statewide property tax plan, the one that was killed, by the way, in the last legislative session. Paul Evans, Democrat of Salem, has submitted HJR 201, Well, he's the one who submitted HJR 201 last year. It would have created Oregon's first ever property tax to go statewide and to be controlled by statewide politicians. 1,200 people testified against it. Less than a dozen testified in support of it. But here's what elections do. They convince people who are wrong that they were right to continue doing what they were doing because they barely squeaked by in race after race. And now they're going to come back and put a $1 tax on every $1,000 of home value. That adds up, by the way. And that's in a state where there's plenty of property taxes, especially if you live in, say, Washington County or Multnomah County. You know what I mean. And so it's going to be, they're going to make you fight the same battle over again. Here's another thing here in the state. Daimler Trucks, which is, by the way, headquartered, its United States headquarters is in the Portland metro area. They're halting diesel truck sales in Oregon because of these new rules that everybody said would have this effect. The world's largest commercial truck manufacturer is refusing to sell its diesel big rigs in Oregon, even though its North American headquarters is right here. The rules are the same in 12 other states, including Washington and California, and the company is still selling trucks in those states. However, they said in a private letter to dealers and sales managers is pausing sales of its diesel-powered trucks intended for Oregon registration. That's after what state regulators are calling a, quote, miscommunication, unquote, about the recently adopted California truck manufacturing rules that led to the halt of sales. Oregon, along with several other states, have adopted California's vehicle emission standards under the Clean Air Act, the Federal Clean Air Act. Each of these states must adopt the same rules as California. Daimler officials claim that there are differences, while DEQ staff said that's the result of a misunderstanding. So maybe they're fighting back, but this is, if you make it harder to transport things by diesel truck, what you'll do is you'll make it harder to buy anything that's transported by diesel truck, and that'll cause it to either become more expensive or less available. If that sounds like what you got under the last 4 years of the Biden administration, supply chain problems, inflation increasing due to government regulation and encroachment and costs heaped upon our supply chain and upon manufacturers, you got it. Oregon is still down for doing that. They love it. So, I think that this is where we need to start focusing our attention on making sure that in Oregon, voters know this is happening, that they speak out, but also we can't any longer allow this stuff to happen without some consequence at the ballot box. I think this is, you can see that many Democrats, frankly, didn't learn this lesson, and they voted in Congress, by the way, against the Laken Riley Act, which many of you might have heard of, is the bill which tries to correct what happened that led to the death of 22-year-old college co-ed in Georgia, Laken Riley. She was kidnapped, raped, and then beat to death with a rock by an illegal immigrant who had previously been arrested for several other crimes and frankly just let go, and then went to a place which liked to think of itself as a sanctuary city. By the way, my understanding is that there's been quite a turnover in the city council or the county commission in the area of Athens, Georgia. But now it'll require the Customs and Border Patrol to detain somebody who is arrested for these crimes. And of course, that usually leads to deportation. And we had Democrats here in Oregon who thought that it was important to vote against it. There's actually one who might have changed her mind about it, and that is Val Hoyle in the 4th District. But you know why she changed her mind? Because somebody did their job last year running against her for Congress, Monique Despain. She constantly talked in every interview, every moment she got, every public forum about how Val Hoyle cast her vote against the Lake and Riley Act, among other outrageous votes that would promote lawlessness and um, and enable the border to be this place that anybody could come through and then go to any sanctuary state and just hide out and commit crimes and never be held accountable. Um, and so this is actually um, what can happen is that even if they fundamentally don't agree, you can scare the hell out of them politically into doing the right thing. That's what we need to do. They need to feel like they're going to lose their job, that they've made a mistake siding with the wrong side on a key issue of public importance. Now, can you trust Val Hoyle to, in her heart, believe that she cast the right vote there and do it with other issues? We'll see. But campaigns, not just elections, but campaigns can have consequences. And kudos to retired Air Force Colonel Monique Despain for fighting like hell in that race. Even though she didn't win, it mattered because she put the heat on a progressive Democrat who is now trying to refashion herself as a law and order Democrat and also as a supporter of Doge. So let's see what happens. I think this is something we all need to pay attention to going forward. Last thing, there's a question here. Will an undersea volcano erupt near Oregon in 2025? I think it already did. But I don't know if there's like a really big one coming. The way I look at it, the same state that can't fight wildfires and can't seem to make sure that roads are big enough and paved enough and in good enough condition and plowed during snowstorms, they're not going to be able to do anything to mitigate the effects of an earthquake. We need to make sure that we ourselves are preparing for this eventuality, and to the extent that we can get government to be ready for it, fine. But our nation's least capable and most corrupt people are running the government here in the state of Oregon, and I wouldn't trust them with any of this stuff. You see what it looks like. People have exactly the same philosophy down in California. Can't fight a wildfire that literally was predicted as soon as they knew the winds were going to be high and it was dry out. Really. So anyway, I hope this is a good show. I hope you guys enjoyed it. It's great to be back doing this. Over the next couple of weeks, I've got the show tomorrow night with Ed Deal, and then over the next couple of weeks, I might be a bit scarce because of some travel. I am going to the inauguration, and I also plan to spend a little time in DC talking to some folks out there. We want to figure out what we can do to advance the policies at the national level back here in Oregon, as well as everywhere. The border, every state's a border state, the way it's going right now. Every state is being hit with fentanyl. Every state is under threat of a terrorist attack. No one in New Orleans thought that they would experience that. They had no idea. So we all have to do what we can to fight, and I'm going to do that. And I know there's others that are going to do that. So wish me luck. So if I don't get to do the show the next couple of weeks, we'll see. Keep tuning in, keep encouraging Sonny and Don, and of course, tune in tomorrow night when I talk with Ed Deal about what's happening here in Oregon. Thanks, Bobby. Thanks to all of you for watching our show. Please share it with everyone you can, and we'll see you tomorrow night on the next